Welcome to the Channel Surfers, where we're just two channel guys trying to ride the waves of channel, calling out some of the challenges, trying to help people navigate this changing, crazy world of partnerships. And along the way, have a little fun and learn something. So I'm
That's
Jeff
right.
Lennon, your co-host, and I'm joined today by John McCabe, my co-host. John, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, Jeff. Good to be with you today, and good to have you do the intro. I like that.
Yeah, just trying to mix it up a little bit, you know. But first of all, man, we've got an awesome guest today. Uh,
Mm,
and I struggled, you know, I always try to think about, hey, when we're gonna have somebody on and I think about what they do and their content. So I've been struggling with two different kind of ways to frame this. And then as we go through, I
mm,
think it'll kind of play itself out. But one is
mm,
because we talk a lot about ecosystems, right? The ecosystem isn't a partner list, it's a revenue system. That's kind of
hmm
one theme that I think I want to get out of this, or at least from a title perspective, right? The other is
right.
the partner chaos and the
Mm,
predictability of revenue and how do you drive those partner ops playbooks, because I think, you know, it gets lost. So
hmm
anyway, with that, we have a really great guest, a funny guy. What kind of, and I'm just going to call you out, Kyle. What kind of made me pause is we met through one of our partnership roundtable sessions, is where I think I first cut interaction with you. And then I started to follow you, and then I was kind of cracking up because I was like, okay, this guy has my sense of humor. So after following some of your posts, but anyway, our guest today is Kyle Edmund Hayes. He's an ecosystem operator who focuses on helping teams find the truth in the partner data, right? So
Welcome, Kyle.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Matt, go ahead, bro.
Well, I'd say everything's spot on. I've just got to make sure my ego can continue to live within these four
No,
walls.
I thought you were making a comment back. But basically, look, so Kyle's, he's a partner operator, right? He's trying to find the right partner model. And what I found interesting, Kyle, is I started reading through a lot of your stuff, and that's when I started DMing you. Was you're trying to pull together the real execution across the partner operations and revenue operations. And John and I talk a lot about, you know, driving the partner systems. And we had a CRO on. We talk a lot about, you know, the chief revenue officer, and so figuring out how to get that blend to work. And like I said, you know, you've had some really interesting posts. So Kyle, I'd like to just let you kind of introduce yourself, get a little background on yourself.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. So, Kyle Hayes, I run Ecosystem Revenue Dynamics, or ERD. We've been going for about a year. And our tagline, it really is like trying to make partner ecosystems visible in organizations. And I think we can all sort of agree that it's hard, you know, whether you're a CRO, CFO, when somebody says, hey, I need to buy a tool for partners, or I need to invest in partners, you know, the often is why, what have they done for me recently? And a lot of that comes down to the visibility through data and everything else. Anyway, prior to that, 20 years across corporate America, IBM, Microsoft, working in go-to-market, revenue operations, and channels. So yeah, it's good to be doing this out on my own, and thank you for asking me to join.
Yeah, no, we're glad to have you. And your background is so interesting, and what you're doing now in terms of like fractional, you know, and that's something that's very, you know, near and dear to Jeff and mine, you know, hearts. So definitely looking to expand upon that for sure.
Awesome. Yeah.
So talk a little bit about your journey to get to this, I'll call it ecosystem operator mindset, right? And I'm pulling some things from different posts that I've read, and I'll just kind of pause because I like to do that. But your facial expressions in your post is it's kind of funny because it kind of makes you stop, but it's really about your content. So I just want to let you know. So. But if you can kind of just walk through, how did you get to that journey? I mean, obviously you've got a lot of large corporate companies that you've worked at, but how did you get to this ecosystem operator mindset that you're kind of driving today through your business?
Absolutely. So for me, ecosystem orchestration at its core root is really all about data. Okay. And it's being able to show, you know, that 360-degree view of how your partner is, you know, connected into your wider organization. And I love the term ecosystem because that is what partners are. They are a larger ecosystem running within a large company. And so when you look at the core facet, and I approach this from a people, process, tech, and data view, because you have to have alignment across those four things, the data is the golden thread. So for me, that always starts off with what is the partner attribution model? And this is very important because 9 times out of 10 it won't be aligned. It may be a last touch model, or maybe hey, the partner sourced this. It says deal registered. But so many times we see in systems, RevOps can lay claim, well, actually it came through this. Sales can say, well, we helped them. Marketing will say, well, they've been in our CRM for 10 years, and this happens. And so by having the right attribution model in place, that makes a huge difference as to how that can solve that visibility, because you really want to, and this is the crux, right? You want to stop tracking, to a revenue level like partner activity, in terms of the engagement. It's great that they engage, great that there's a click rate. You want to start, I call them you want to instrument partner motions as revenue evidence in your systems, and that's the key thing, because if you do that and everything is locked and agreed and defined ubiquitously, then in the standard reporting that any executive or salesperson will see, they'll be able to go, oh yeah, click the button, partner source, click the button, oh, that was partner influenced. And it's so important. And everybody focuses at the top of the funnel or the top of the bow tie, where it's all about lead generation and incoming. But the other real core component, especially in SaaS, is obviously customer success, renewal. And so influence there is huge. And especially as buyer journeys are evolving and they're updating, buyers are being more informed. They don't want to be hassled by SDRs. They really want to be able to connect with trusted advisors. And those advisors today are partners, because they get to know their business. They're going to take them out to dinner. They're going to get to know where they're trying to get to and how they can help them achieve that. So it's so important to be able to go, actually, it may not have transacted through that partner, but actually this other partner influenced it by 80%. And so by having that full end-to-end picture, it's kind of the big thing. And I see that as, and I'm sure we could all shake a bag and say there are many issues that need to be addressed in the partner world, but for me, that's one of the bigger ones that has to be focused on. And even if we didn't look at attribution, I could probably pick 1,000 holes just on the topic of data alone, which is always a wonderful source of pain for a lot of people. And it's the unsung, unsexy hero, which needs to be addressed.
And it's funny. It's something that John talks about all the time. That again, having a PRM, because it gives you that perspective of the data. And I've posted stuff in the past that people are like, it's not about the data, it's not about reports. I'm like, the devil's in the details, and the data will tell you. But to your point, the attribution, being able to give credit, having worked in corporate America, right? Or I should just say in corporate, don't want to just probably universal, but there's this funny thing that happens. So you got these deals that start to come in, and like you just said, you're going through all this process, and whether it was the direct partner and like I've always seen 3 or 4 partners potentially impacting deals when I was at EMC. And there was this, I just called it the fingerprint process. And what it was, as the deal was moving down the chain, people went, yep, I touched it.
It's true.
But really what you're saying is, trying to figure out that piece to kind of dig into it. So here's an interesting question. So when you walk in, when you're in your business now, like if you walked into a business now or a new partner organization, what is the first thing that makes you tell if it's real or just slideware in their approach, in their playbook? And again, I'm not trying to call people out, but usually walk in, you're like, okay, this is a lot of
it's I mean, so noise. I'm laughing because on one hand, there are so many things you could look at, but that you ask for. So for me, 9 times out of 10, they come to me with a specific challenge or thing. Like, oh no, you've said this really resonates. We're trying to build out trying to benchmark our partners, and said, okay, cool. And so when you ask them, normally the first question is, how many partners do you have? What is and then more importantly, what is the split of revenue holistically, between partners and direct? That's when you can start to call BS, because very quickly they go, oh, well, it's going to take us some time to, compile the report. It's like, okay, already that's a state of, you need my help, because if you have to take time to compile a report, that should be 2 clicks in your CRM or your PRM portal, or even from your data warehouse, you're in trouble. Because, and I'd used this term on a presentation a while back, but if giving slideware to vibe, like, well, if they're going to do a lot of this, it's a gut feel. It's like, no, it's akin to sandbagging. Like, you have to have it all in the data, and you have to have that showing all the way throughout, and it should be easy to access. That's it. But this is where trying to be non-judgmental when going in and asking those questions is important, because more often than not, they don't know what they don't know, and they're asking for help. And the other is being agnostic and not going, I wouldn't have done it that way. I wouldn't have, but it's a good way to understand why they've done what they've done, and then where you lead them in terms of how they can fix it.
I find like
the approach
with a PRM and how you can get that rich
point.
data, all the metrics from what you're doing, from close win rates and close loss rates and things like that, and pipeline, and it justifies what the program is producing. But a lot of times it's not the data I find executives want. They want what deals are coming in and what deals are closing. They think a partner program is set up to instantly produce revenue and opportunity, and it takes time. And I look at the three of us sitting here, and I was thinking, God, we're three guys who build programs and know it takes time. Yet Kyle's talking about these executives who want, they want to understand how things are working. And, you said something like, when things aren't going well, guess who's the one that gets the hook? And, it's us. And unfairly, because it's not, a program that can be, 6 months to 12 months where you see success. You got to look 18 to 24 months out, and do executives have that time frame to wait, I
mean, it's a completely fair and valid point. And I'm with you, because it's one of the bugbears that I used to hit my head against when I was in the field doing this, because it's like, we want results now. It's just like, well, you've asked me to boil the ocean. You give me a budget of a tea kettle, and you want results tomorrow. And no, that's not realistic or feasible. But then, and I think this is more potentially in private equity backed companies, where they're so much driven to like how that fiscal year is paying out, or planning out, and when what's in, what's out. The other part of it, I would say, is like they try to run the channel business from a direct sales metric perspective. Now, if they are a true, sales-led model, and that's fine, because that's the nature of the business. But what they have to do is make sure that you're bringing in those partner metrics. And don't ask me what they are off the top of my head, because I always have to have them a list that I can sort of like go, it's these ones. But you have to have those embedded into that data. And more importantly, making sure that the data you collect into your CRM is synchronized somehow, somewhere, to your opportunities, to your account data, so you have that full picture. And that doesn't have to be in the CRM, it should be, but it can also be in the enterprise data warehouse. So you can, more importantly, connect your BI tool and see how all of these things are panning out. And that's the joy with a lot of this.
No, I mean, you're dead on right there. I mean, if you're not, co-syncing or bi-directionally syncing data into the CRM, because that helps sales, you're not really touching the CRM as much. You're just creating a lead to funnel into CRM for your reps to work on. But, let's get right down to the nuts and bolts here. Like, if you create a lead for a sales organization, they better take it and run and start to work on it. By not doing anything with it, that causes your metrics to skew a little bit to the south. It doesn't help your program progress. And I've seen that happen where leads are created and things just don't move. An appointment isn't set. Nothing happens, and the partner wonders what's going on.
It's so true. And the 2 points I'll add to that is, on one hand, if we just think about it from a deal registration coming in, more often than not, and this goes back to our attribution, that marketing team, bless them, they have no idea what's just been synchronized and sent across to really create an opportunity. Not a clue. So automatically, that top end of the funnel, gone. They have no idea. And that's where marketing marketing operations people are, are godsends in sort of connecting with partner ops people and rev ops to make sure they have that alignment. And to your second point, if you're passing leads back to partners in that true reciprocity way, and my honest and ideal definition of a partnership is benefits that work both ways, and a lot of people view it as what are you going to do for me? It's very much comes down to, are we equipped? Do we have the process or the methodology to then give leads to partners? And then what are those rules they should be governed around?
That's a whole mindset you got to convince your sales organization to wrap their brains around to do. It's not always easy.
Yeah, and that's before we. Oh, it's true. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of control. They think a lot of them think when they're handing it off, right, that you no longer have control. And I just made the note because John, you hit a really good point based on what you were saying, Kyle, which is where I've always seen, well, I've seen it a lot, not always, but a lot, is that the breakdown between the expectations of what the manufacturer, like, the Microsoft, the IBM, like what their expectation is for a deal to close, and the partner that's driving the deal's expectation, working directly with the customer. And if you're doing a true partnership, there's clean, bidirectional there's communication back and forth happening, right? So everybody should be on the same page, same expectations. And sometimes nope, that deal has to close. We've all been there. That deal needs to come in this quarter. Going, they're not ready.
It's so true. And part of that comes down to me, like good enablement, good onboarding, and to sort of set that expectation. But also, and I think I've also talked about this from more of an agnostic standpoint, where part of that is knowing on both sides, sales motions, relationships, etc. But then also going, do you know what? It is a bad economic downturn. Like, this industry is seeing a hit. They're not going to spend the money, so you may want it. It's not going to happen. And I would argue politely that bad sales leaders will just beat and berate instead of empower and enable those, including partners, to deliver.
Let's just switch gears a little bit here, because you posted something on LinkedIn yesterday. It was, kind of blew my mind, and something I totally agree about. And that was enablement. And I like the way you broke it down and kind of ended up, relating it to Jerry Maguire, show me the money. But let's talk about enablement, because for me, if you listen to the shows, the shows over the past 2 years, I really feel enablement's important, because if you don't train partners how to sell your stuff, they're not going to sell it. And you're just going to be stuck trying to figure out how to get opportunities created. But then there's the cost of enablement and building in, how do you do it? Do you do it with a PRM? Do you do it in LMS? Do you do it in-house? Do you do it, grassroots level, going and doing lunch and learns, but give us your take on enablement, because I thought it was really sharp and very to the point.
It was brilliant. I loved it.
Now I've got to remember what I wrote.
You're like a pint of Guinness. You were brilliant.
So the answer is, let's call it, enablement is important, whether you're direct or indirect. And the biggest thing is, when any partner comes into your program, especially if they're smaller, they need to be able to get up and running, and what I like to call go from 0 to 100 in the quickest time possible, in the easiest time possible. So my viewpoint is, where possible, for, let's say, the higher tiers, you may want to do white glove to get them to do that. For but however, self-service is also one of the best things, because you're not trying to herd cats. People can do it at their own pace, but then they're empowered to go and drive it. Now, all of that to one side, I do believe that should happen, and it shouldn't be that much of an uplift to make it happen. We have the technology, we have the tools. Where this starts to fall apart is people start to get confused between enablement and what I would say education, and the sort of core components, because sales enablement, fairly straightforward, then check your knowledge, understanding, making sure that the assets are there and up to date. That can be in a good PRM system, maybe even a SharePoint site, or whatever DMS they prefer. And when you're going through a deal cycle, making sure you have the right assets, the right use cases in play. And this is important. Now, to do it quickly and easily, you can just uplift and shift your direct sales and pre-sales content to partners, because they'll have the same roles. There won't be any sort of like confidential information that a partner won't be already a part of through an NDA as part of your program. When it can be more complicated is when it starts to come down to, well, actually, I have a services arm, or I'm doing support, because there will be certain, and what I say, legally defensible certifications you'll probably want to have built and in place. So you can say you must have at least 2 people trained at this level for support, or you must be able to implement and certify and have experience in this. And that's where training is one thing, and having the right content is available is key. Also, the certification platform, plenty around. Criterion is a great one, but then also, making sure you have the hands-on experience as well, especially if they're new, especially if you're not the size of Microsoft. Being able to work with your partners and help them is key if you're trying to do out services implementations. And I say that from the view of, there was a report, I think, a couple of years ago that sort of shows if you are an ISV and you are a software vendor and you have a services arm, it's a great opportunity for your channel to take it and run it for you, because the overheads, are lower. They're far more efficient. They can scale quicker, and that's a lot of operating costs you can reduce internally.
Right,
and that's very important. I mean, the only thing I would sort of say in that as well is, content should always be up to date. And one of the biggest bugbears I have across PRMs and, to an extent, LMS platforms is how up-to-date that content is, and then what the content management strategy is in place. And one of the key things I always like to bring to the table and have the conversation with, because I've lived it, I've been in that situation, is whenever you're implementing that sort of software, you need to have, before you go, I want this feature, what is your content management strategy? Who is updating it? What is the factory that you have that's going to build it, update it, maintain it? Because if it's out of date and it's incorrect, or if it's not right, you're automatically creating that negative partner experience. And so you're not going to get those hearts and minds of partners. They're not going to log in. They're not going to check on it. And that's so important. So you've got to have those.
That's true. Very true. I like keeping content up to date too. There is a PRM out there, Intro, that actually creates enablement programs with a click of a button through AI. As long as you feed the content to the partner portal, it will be the most current, relevant content you can produce for an enablement program.
That's impressive. I'm going to look into them again. And a prior background for me is in enablement, so I'm maybe a little harder on that topic with a lot of people because of that. But again, you've got to have good training, and I look at this with a very black and white mindset. Right, 9 times out of 10, you are not Microsoft, you are not Google, you're not Cisco. You are a small cog in a much larger ecosystem. So if you're going to make it hard, if you are going to keep things up to date, how much is it going to take for them to go to your competitor? Or how much better does your competitor have to be for for them to take your business?
Yeah,
it's that simple.
Well, it comes back to keeping it simple, right? I say this on many shows. Well, and part of the takeaway from when I was reading your post, which I kind of shared in the pre-conversation, as I was reading your post, I thought of the Jerry Maguire, "Show me the money," and then I looked down after I hit send, and I'm like,
but it's true, right? I mean, and making sure you have people in place, or resources in place that. Because, and I've seen this in Microsoft where, we'll say, here's a platform, here's how we recommend you use it. I can guarantee you in the wild, there are going to be 900 different use cases of, that would be classified as not supported way of using it, but it works. It'll be the same with customers. And so partners are going to encounter that. And as a good feedback loop, include them in the conversation so they can help build out that content. They'll happily sit down, over a beer or a coffee and help you, say, you need to look at these 5 things. Because otherwise, if your assets during deal cycles aren't helpful and there's no dedicated CAM or there's no phone to call, that deal gets stalled, and that can take longer, or they can lose the customer. It's a bad experience for everybody involved, and which is a shame, considering partners are more than likely to increase the size of any opportunity and help close a deal cycle faster.
Yeah, very true.
Damn. I'll kind of, John, you've heard me say this, and we had a good friend of ours on a while back, Nick Nicholas, and so I've been following this mantra, and I'm actually adding to it now because over the last 2 weeks now, just reading some of this stuff. So I've always called it, look, people, process, and technology. It's been that way since I've been doing this stuff back in late 90s, early 2000s, right? People, process, technology. But the more I've dug into it, I really need to add data because it is people, process, and technology, but it's that data fact. And I didn't realize I was doing it, right, John? I mean, you remember I was kind of slicing and dicing shit back in the early days with Salesforce, but having the data, and I think you just articulate it really well, Kyle, which is that, the data is going to help point you to where it is, and that accountability to pipeline and making sure that you're doing it right. The data is there, right? Just because you have a moniker that says, oh, we have, I think one of your things was, we have 200 certified partners. Okay, how many are driving revenue? 6. Right? It's like, okay, wow. So, but no, I think that's fascinating. What would you say would be if you were to go in and start, where would you start first? Would you start with, fixing the partner profile? Would you start with the technology or their process?
Honestly, data, and again, it comes down to what they're seeing as their challenge, right? And so if they're going, oh, we're trying to recruit more partners, it's kind of like, I can guarantee you probably already have the ones you need. And so it's probably around IPP is going to be a big part of that, like making sure that they understand who they're trying to recruit instead of at times, Wild West, it can be. But really, off the back of that, it's then what, and this is a good exercise actually, and it's not even technical. It's like, where do partners touch different systems, different like objects across PRM, CRM, MAP? What do they touch? What do they update, and in what capacity? Because if you can map that out, you can see, oh, actually, Christ, hang on. When we're going through like lead conversion, we're asking for these 5 things. We don't have that, or these things are missing because it's partners. So, well, it's important, and you can really start to see very quickly where those gaps are falling through. Now, data is that bedrock, and to your point, if you think about, and I wish I was just trying to look at it, there's a fantastic infographic from I think like 2016, which talks about like the evolution of data, and it starts off with like the hardcore ERP systems, from general ledgers back in the 50s all the way and mainframes all the way through to like metadata today, right? And that's very true in the sales cycles. If you think about how intent signals, conversational intelligence are all being leveraged, these are all other data points. And they're so useful to be able to take this information and then being able to sort of mold it, share it, and sort of factor it out in different assets. And either you're collecting data and not leveraging it, or you're not collecting the right data and you're as the saying goes, it's garbage, and you're predicting off the back of that. And this is why when people go to me, oh, we just need a new tool, and I call it's lipstick on a pig. You can put whatever tool you like on it. If you don't, fix, the underlying stuff, it's still going to be ugly. And for me, like the whole rhetoric, and definitely the more mindset to the wider question you gave me, is get your house in order. Because if you have the foundational structure, you have the right and I do mean shared definitions of what success is, what a partner success is, right across the board, from sales, marketing, channel, customer success, and then you have that implemented, architecturally within each of those systems, because it's not system of truth, it's systems multiple of truth. And if you have that in place, it'll be so much easier to scale. You'll be able to see which partners are delivering, which ones aren't, which ones do you want to keep, which ones do you need to incentivize, which ones do you really sadly just need to say goodbye to and let them go. And that's, and even to the point with enablement, being able to see which ones did the training, which ones did not, which ones have fallen foul. Which always makes me laugh when the yearly conversations of letter of standing come to mind. It's like, how did they do? Well, let's take us 3 months to figure out what they booked, what they didn't book, what they fulfilled versus sold, and all those things. So if you have those core foundational elements in place, and data is that bedrock and golden thread throughout, it'll be so much easier to scale and to sort of see which ones are adding value, and which of those 6 partners do you really want to help grow and enable versus the other 194 that aren't.
Exactly. Well, Kyle, look, man, I apologize. I mean, we're kind of at the top right now. We don't want to.
We might have to have on again.
First of all, we could probably talk for another hour. But just to kind of wrap things up, so I actually have two different takeaways. John last, so I have my three. But for anybody that wants to find you, what I'll tell people first is, what I've taken away from reading your stuff and even this conversation is most companies and teams don't have a partner problem; they have a system problem, right? And it's just messy data, unclear motions, all those things. And that's kind of where I see you kind of help bring clarity to that. So tell people, like, what's the name of your organization, your company, and then how can people find
Absolutely.
you?
So the name is Ecosystem Revenue Dynamics. You can find us on LinkedIn and on the web at ecosystemrevenuedynamics.com. And again, whether it's looking for that advisory bit of help, bit of information, whether it's actually you need us to help do the thing, we can help. A lot of our business comes through from that that data perspective, but then also routes to market like hyperscalers. That's a big thing for us as well. But it all ties back to the same thing.
Good deal.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, look, man. Yeah, sorry, man. This was great. I'll leave you with the three things, and it's not what people think it's going to be. My takeaways are itchy feet, shake a bag, and hug bears. Don't know what they mean, but it's very cheeky. But I will definitely look them up. But anyway, well, look, if anybody wants to find us, I'm Jeff at channelsurfers.com. And John is John at channelsurfers.com. You can find us on YouTube at Channel Surfer Guys. You can find us on LinkedIn. We post all of our episodes every Tuesday morning, or at least I'll say morning on
our
East
website,
side, hopefully. But yeah, we'd love to get more conversation. And hopefully have you back, because I think what you're doing, and like I said, I love the focus that you're taking and the message that you have. But John, I'll kind of pivot to you for any last words before we drop here.
Don't forget our website, channelsurfers.com. You can reach us. You can see all our episodes there. But Kyle, really great to meet you, and I think there's more conversation that has to be had here.
Thank you for having me, and I'd love to come back. This has been a great conversation.
Awesome. That's what we wanted. All right. Until the next time. Thank you, audience. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate you being a part of this.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Kyle.
Cheers.
Aloha.